we're going to start off with just kind of taking a pause real quick and just doing a little self-reflecting. You can write things down, or you can kind of just make mental notes of it. But what I want you to do is first take a kind of a big deep breath in, relax your shoulders, and breathe out. And breathe in again. And then slowly breathe out. And we'll do it one last time. Breathe in and breathe out. And what I'd like you to do is to either write or take a mental note of 3 things. The first is something that you have learned about yourself or your family. It could be in the last several weeks, the last year, the last few months. You can kind of go far back. Something that you've learned about yourself and your family. The second thing is something that you have struggled with, or maybe you've noticed your family struggling with. And the last is something you hope for. Either something you hope for yourself or for your family. So something you've learned, something you struggle with, and something you hope for. Kind of move on into finding supportive tools for you guys. Parenting young children is tough because you are really that full caregiver for them, because just their essential needs they can't do yet independently. So it's a big struggle. And I think that when you're trying to balance that along with caregiving for a loved one, along with like your other obligations of taking care of the house and grocery shopping and making sure people are safe and getting to and from and working, it's a lot. It's a lot that to manage. So when it comes to toddlers and preschoolers, one of the first things that should be established to help them cope is really that connection that you have with them, right? It's that attachment. Let me see if it's on here. Yep, it's on my next slide. So it's that safety and that security that gives kids the sense of, okay, I'm being taken care of. I've got my structure. I've got my routines. They know what to expect. And that brings a sense of safety. And during the pandemic, when things have really changed for us as adults, the young ones might not nearly be as impacted. Maybe they weren't really involved with so many, they're not in school yet, unless they're in preschool or, little play groups and stuff. But it has changed and it has shifted where maybe they're seeing like their parent at home more often, or just the tension has risen, right? Your anxiety and your stress level is starting to increase, and kids pick up on that. They soak it right up and they feed off of it. So it's really important for us to give parents, or to give kids, that sense of safety and security and routines and structure. So one thing I usually have parents do is that since they're so young and they're not able to read yet at this time, is to giving some visual cues as to what's going to be expected throughout the day. So writing up like on a whiteboard or chalkboard or a piece of paper, and either drawing pictures or taking photos of things in your house of like what their day-to-day is going to look like, their breakfast routine, getting in the car, going to daycare, or somebody at home taking care of them. What's their day-to-day to look like? That gives kids a sense of security. The other part for kids at this age is they are learning about their emotions and how to self-regulate. And that takes a long, long time. It's not overnight. I mean, even adults are still learning to kind of self-regulate their feelings. But as parents, what we can do is just giving validation and naming feelings and emotions that you're seeing your kids exhibit is huge. When you recognize that they're upset or they're frustrated or they're sad or they're excited, and you say the emotion and you match it on your face too, like, oh, you're so excited right now, you're having so much fun. Every time you do that, it's going to make that connection in their brain to the feeling, the name, that you're validating it for them. And it'll slowly build up to what that actually physically feels like in their body. And the more often you do that, the better you're going to be able to continue that navigation for them on regulating emotions. I use books a lot for kids, and it just helps them understand what's happening. So the Feelings book is one of my favorites for the young kids, and it helps them to just identify with feelings, and you can kind of act it out. Another great one is called The Calm Down Time. It's a perfect board book to just explain different feelings and ways to help their body calm down, and starting at a really young age, right? To identify those feelings and what they can do to express it in a healthy way. So we don't want to push all those feelings down and ignore them. We want to give them a safe outlet to express it, even those emotions that are big, like anger or frustration or sadness. We need to give kids those tools to let them out. In fact, one of my other favorites for this particular age group, and he would probably thrive in it, is called The Rabbit Listened. And it's perfect because it talks about, you know, that this child was building blocks and they just crumble down to the ground. And there's a new character that comes along on each page, and it's an animal, and they're trying to fix it or trying to, you know, make him laugh, and they're trying to just switch his emotions. And it wasn't until the rabbit came and just sat there and witnessed and modeled the same body language that the child was having, just quiet. And then eventually they made this connection, and the child was able to like work through it. But it's about that pure validation that the children need. But it's the same for us, right? Don't we, when we talk to a friend or a family member and you're telling them about something that's, you know, really big in your life, and maybe it's really hard, and they just come back with an answer to fix it, and you're like, I don't want advice. I just want somebody to listen to me and just validate how I feel. Saying something like, oh my God, this sounds like really hard right now. Like this is a tough time for you. That connection will go much deeper, right? And you're like, oh, you feel heard, you feel this relief. And then, yeah, I do. So now, and then you can go into it more. It's the same with kids. We have to recognize emotion. We have to validate it for them. And then we got to find healthy coping skills to release it. I didn't mention this, but there are some great books about separation. So Llama Llama, Mrs. Mama is a great one. You might see the kids having some separation anxiety or regression with that. The Kissing Hand, The Invisible String, that's another classic one. We'll give you a list with all of those resources on there. It's usually those really vulnerable emotions, right? So it's sadness, guilt, confusion, like those really deep, big emotions that are vulnerable to express. And oftentimes we mask it with other frustrations of like anger, or I'm just gonna compartmentalize it and shove it down somewhere because I have to get this task done. And you really don't have time right then to really feel it. So yes, it's normal, and yes, kids do it, but it's also incredibly healthy when you can model it for kids and recognize what they're doing, because in a cathartic way, it's helpful for you too. And everything that we have been even talking about, like COVID alone, we haven't even used this word tonight, but it's all grief, right? It's completely grief related. It's a loss of everything. I mean, a loss of control, a loss of sense of normalcy, a loss of routines. We are coping with grief. And what do you do when you're coping with grief is you have to lean on your village or your outlets. Well, a lot of those outlets have been kind of shut down from COVID too. I mean, currently in the Sacramento area in Placer County too, we are purple, which means, our gyms, our restaurants, like I'm gonna go get your nails done. Like those things are just not even an opportunity. You have to get really creative, right, to feel connected and to find those new outlets during COVID. And it can get a little exhausting. I mean, I feel like sometimes we're on our fumes, but it's things like this where you kind of reconnect and you're like, okay, no, I haven't tried that. Let me try this. Or even just this type of workshop is a sense of like, okay, I'm not going crazy. Like this stuff is like, everybody's kind of feeling this and it's normal. But yeah, this stuff's tough. This is tough to manage. It's tough to caregive. It's tough to parent. It's tough to do it during the holidays and during a pandemic. One thing we didn't talk about, but is crucial for kids and connecting with them and that attachment and that process of things is play. So playing with your kids, and I'm talking about getting on the floor, opened it in play where the child is leading and you're giving them your full attention. So no cell phones, no TV, nothing is distracting you. You're not talking to another adult. It's just you and your child. And you just follow their play and open into play, like dramatic play, blocks, constructive type of play, letting them build things and create. And during that play is when you can name and validate things that you see, like emotions, or if they're pretending like animals are fighting, you can even name that, like, oh, he's a scary tiger, and you like get involved in it. Those little moments that you're doing for your kids is giving them that space to process all of this madness that's happening, because that's how kids learn about what's happening. They need to process it through play. That play is the foundation of their development. So they need that. So anytime you can get on the floor with them and just have that one-on-one, and you could say like, oh, this is our special time to play. I'm going to set the clock for, 8 minutes. And this is just our time, and you get to choose, and you get to do things in a lot of different ways. You're giving them a sense of control. You're giving them validation. You're giving them your full attention. You're being present with them. That's huge. I mean, we can go through the whole day with our kids, and sometimes we're like, man, was I even really like connected with them during that? Because they were telling me these things and I was thinking about 15 other things while doing 3 other things. So having that connection and that time with them is huge. Another part too, to help kids with coping and managing their feelings, is not just naming and validating feelings and using books and doing it through play, but to give them a space, like I call it like a calm down corner, or like a calm down kit or coping kit, and give them an opportunity to work through those feelings. So I have I'm making a kit right now. It's funny enough. I have a little guy tomorrow that I'll be seeing. And so I just took a box and I put a lot of different items in here that can help him calm down. I'm gonna unshare my screen so you can see the little box. Okay, so it's really simple. I have I created like a little chart, and it says his name, and it's like these are his calming choices. So when he's feeling overwhelmed with big feelings, it doesn't have to be just mad and anger. It could be just like big feelings, and sometimes it's hard for them to name it and identify with it. But these are things that he can do. He can get a hug. I created a scream box with him a couple weeks ago. He can color. There's a calm down glitter jar in here. So there's a lot of different visual options, and then it says underneath it. And then in the box, I'll have a lot of different things. One of them is definitely a tool of like seeing your feelings and being able to identify them. This is one for little ones too, of just like emojis and faces. You can take pictures of your kids or the kids you're working with and like show me happy, sad, frustrated, confused. Take pictures and then print them out. And use it all during different times, not just when they're upset. Like you like, oh, you're feeling so silly, and like go back to the little kit and show them. But in the calm down coping kit box, I made a glitter jar. These are great because, again, it's that mixture of like all of our feelings. It can be like swirling around, but eventually what happens is like glitter, like our feelings, it eventually starts to fall down to the ground and just is like calm. But this is a great tool too, so that it actually will make them slow down to distract, breathe, watching, you're calming down, and they don't even realize it. But it's a very simple tool to use. Other items that should always be implemented in these coping kits is sensory items. So when a kid is feeling overwhelmed with their feelings, they need, they usually need some sort of sensory input and to help their brain kind of calm down. Like if they've like flipped their lid, right? So I always like talk about your brain being like your hand, and the inside of your brain is that part of your brain that really holds all your emotions. And we keep our top of our brain calm. But if we flip our lid where we are out of control and your kid's at like a 10, you're not going to get them to calm down at this point. So you have to use those tools to kind of calm their brain down before, and use that visual. So sensory items could be Play-Doh, kinetic sand you could have in here. I go to like the dollar bin at Target and stuff, and they have just like different random little toys. Deep breathing, huge. So, pinwheels, bubbles, the little birthday blowers. Those are all great things to help kids calm down, and it gives them that sensory input and output that they need, and it's safe, right? So we know what we may need when we're feeling overwhelmed, whether that's to go outside and go for a walk, or have a glass of wine, or watch reality TV. But to a toddler and a preschooler, they can't do those things. We need to give them other tools that are age appropriate for them. One thing that we didn't touch on, but I think is really important for especially caregivers, is that we have a loved one whose health is, not at the top of its levels. That's why we're become caregivers. We're taking care of them. And it's impacting our children. So one thing for this age group that is really important and super simple to incorporate is, just getting a doctor kit at home and packing it with items that they are familiar with, like Band-Aids and syringes for medicine, but also items that they might see their loved one have. So maybe it's tubing, maybe your loved one has a cannula for oxygen, so you can get some tubing. Maybe they have an IV, maybe they have a port. There's different things that they might see more often that you can incorporate in the medical play kit. And you don't have to direct the play at all. You just have it in the play area and let your child explore, and kind of just sit back and validate and see what they're doing, and kind of mirror, right, what they're expressing in their play. But I think you'll be shocked by what kids do, and it's their way of processing what's happening to their loved one. It's really healthy, and it gives that stepping stone to talk about other things that might be occurring if their health is declining and the prognosis is terminal. When you've already kind of let that foundation of what's happening by incorporating medical play and talking about your loved one who's ill, it's going to give that open dialogue and that safety for your child to be able to come and talk to you about them, or ask questions, or just express those emotions. Another one too is incorporating body books. So this is from Usborne. This is the big book of the body. It's great for preschoolers. Brianna, your kids would love this because it's gigantic. It like pulls out, shows you everything about the body. So you're educating them on what's happening, about just normal body and health and education. But you can also connect it to your loved one's illness. And you can talk about those functions in their body, whether it's organs or an autoimmune illness, and kind of break it down to teach them about what's happening. Again, it gives that foundation of communication, connection, expression, and that's what we really need to cope with, right? So other things too that can be helpful to just help kids cope. I have that meme up there, you know, like when a 3-year-old asks you to get in her tent, you get in the tent, right? Because that is child-centered play. That is like, you're just gonna follow their lead, just do it, and it's so great. But tents too, you know, building forts or getting like a play tent. This is great for this age group, and especially with everything that's happening, because again, it builds that safety and that security around them. You might see your kids having different themes right now with play, where they're, you know, taking care of things, or things might be dying, things might be getting hurt. You might see like superhero things going back and forth, where, you know, there's like some power and some control. There's a good guy and a bad guy. There's other themes of like just medical play and hospital play. And it's all totally appropriate, but especially right now, during this time, during knowing that they have a loved one that is also being taken care of. It's very appropriate for kids to kind of express that stuff. Other things that you can do too, activity-wise. So there's a picture of the hands and the string. This is a hug that I help. I'm not the creator of this, most certainly not, but I use it all the time. Pinterest always has some great ideas. But it's essentially where you draw your child's hand on both sides, and then you measure their hug. And you can do this with your loved one too. So if there is a physically, like they cannot connect, right, and they can't be together, and there's that separation. And Crystal Ann, this works too with kids who are in the hospital and they can't see their sibs, or they can't see their family members at home, is creating something where it's like a tangible item, right? You're giving an actual hug. And yes, it's not the same thing, but in essence, you're letting them process like how they're feeling of being separated and alone, and they're frustrated, and you're kind of working that out through the creating of this hug. So I do that often with kids. Normalizing fears and worries is another big one. I'm sure you guys are seeing this a lot. I use things like a worry eater, where I help kids write or draw things that are upsetting them, and then they feed my worry eater and it gobbles it up. So it kind of just takes that weight off of them. Then they can kind of make their own worry eater. This is out of just a paper plate, and or you really can make a worry eater out of anything, a box, anything. But again, it's giving them tools and outlets to kind of express things that are happening, but you can do it in a family way. So pretty straightforward stuff, right? It's just naming, validating emotions, that connection through play, incorporating, medical play and books on bodies, and helping kids to have a language and a foundation of understanding what's happening with their loved one. And it also gives you as the caregiver and as the parent a sense of relief, like that you don't have to I have to hide this from them, I have to protect them from them. You want to be honest. You want to tell them what's happening, and using very simple, concrete language that they will understand. But hiding it is never good, because kids will start to wonder what's happening. They pick up on it really quickly. It'll increase anxiety for them, and fears and misconceptions, especially at this age. So being honest, knowing that it's always in small doses. It's never like one big conversation, and that it's going to be a continual progress. It's a process, right? And it takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of time for us to, be okay with things, and process information of our loved one's diagnosis or another change that we have to deal with, the pandemic and how we're going to cope with the holidays with this. It takes a lot, excuse me, it takes a lot of time, and we have to give that safe space for kids to have their own time. I usually, when I have a tough conversation with kids about something that might be really hard, like explaining that, you know, somebody has cancer or somebody is dying, and I've done this with my own children too, I always end it with, you know, anytime you ever have questions, you can always come to me and I will answer them the best I can. And sometimes kids will, they won't even say, like, they might be information seekers where they're asking a lot of information, or they might just be like, okay, peace, I'm gonna go play now. And that's your cue of like knowing, like, I'm not gonna chase them down. I keep giving them information. They're telling me they're good right now. They're gonna go process it and play. And then when they're ready, they'll come back to me. And it always happens. You just have to leave that open door of communication and follow their lead, right? You know your kids better than anybody, so follow their lead. We have a couple more sessions lined up in December, and it's similar in the sense of, you know, helping the sandwich generation, but coping with, the first one is school-age children, and then our last session will be focused on adolescents. So if you're able to join, or you know of friends or colleagues that would benefit from this, please, you know, send them the link and they can register, and we would love to have them.